Today on the Ave Podcast, the NBA playoffs are here. The first round has just begun, and I'm joined by co-founder of the Skills Refinement Group, O'Neil Kamaka, as we have a conversation about the Bucks' dominance over the Heat so far, Memphis being under Grizzly. Should we be showing more love to Trae Young and the Hawks? Plus, we discuss if we should take the Suns serious against a Lakers team getting into rhythm. And why the hell can't the Clips stay with Luka? And of course, we got to share our thoughts on Kwame Thanos'n Brown. South Sharav is available wherever you listen to your podcasts. Hit the like and favorite buttons. I will pleasantly accept all your 5-star loving. I appreciate you in advance for that. And to check out my past shows from the Ave, The Stoop, My Story, all of it, make sure you continue to follow along with SouthSharav.com. Once again, that's SouthSharav.com. Now, before we begin, I just want to announce that a new episode of The Stoop called Code of the Sneaks, a 3-part series, will be out tomorrow on the South Sharav YouTube channel, where we'll be diving into a deep conversation about the sneakerhead culture. Please check that out. This is a really good one. I don't like to toot my own horn, but honestly, this is a really good one. Please check that out tomorrow. And this podcast was recorded before Luka came and slapped up the Clippers again, and before Russell Westbrook got popcorn tossed on him. Which was messed up, and I don't blame him for freaking out the way that he did. Anyways, though, let's get this started. It's the Ave Podcast with Cal C on South Sharav Radio. We sprinkling some of that mama seasoning on this episode. Is that paprika?
Welcome to the Ave Podcast with Cal C on South Sharav Radio.
Welcome to the Ave Podcast. How you doing today, Mr. Kamaka? How you doing, sir?
I'm great. How are you?
Doing good. How was your playoff long weekend? Did you catch any games?
Of course. I watched every single one. I watched the play-in games and every single first-round game. Every game. Try to watch as much as I can. Obviously having a little one, you got to devote some family time, and so
absolutely, yeah.
Whenever I could, definitely got the late games. Definitely watched the Suns, Lakers games. All the Clippers, Mavs, all the late games. Definitely got those. So.
Yeah,
I was able to get some games.
Yeah, the play-in games was nice. The Western Conference one, especially the Grizzlies and the Warriors. That one was really nice. You just wish, like I said, I think the Warriors, they're in a situation where it's like, I felt like, it's weird to say, but it's like they came into that game with almost, they're playing with like house money almost. You know what I mean? Because, really? I mean, a little bit. I mean, it would have been nice for them to make the playoffs, of course, but I just think that depth-wise, they didn't have enough depth to go up against Utah. And really and truly, they probably should have made it, because just the turnovers alone killed them in both games.
But they've always turned the ball over.
Right, but they've always turned the ball absolutely over. But they've always had the personnel to override it, right? But this time they don't have that kind of personnel to override it. So, but I just think next year, like when everybody's healthy and stuff, and depending who they get in the off season, I think they're gonna be a monster again, or at least somewhere. I don't know if it's gonna be like Durant level when Durant was there, but they're gonna be right there again, because you could see there's guys injured obviously, and then I think for guys like a Jordan Poole and these type of guys, like I think it's actually pretty good for them to go through these situations, have them take a little bit of lumps, bring that into the off season. You know what I mean? Like I think it was actually like a good experience for them to take into next year. And have them as your reserves coming off the bench, knowing what they're doing, being through like a little bit of that pressure. Like I think it's ultimately good for them. As long as they don't get rid of too much of them, I think it's a good thing, especially if they can get everybody healthy.
I agree. I think what I love as a basketball purist, what I love about the Golden State Warriors is they're so locked in. When Steph is just in perpetual motion, he's just constantly moving. And then it's so hard, right? Mm-hmm. Guys have to be like, I don't think people realize how hard the defense, you cannot, normally in defense, you can sort of rest. I don't want to say relax, but if you're on the weak side, you can sort of rest a little bit. You see the action going. on one side and you're resting, your head's on a swivel, you're seeing where the screen's coming from on the weak side, whatever action, you could talk your way through it. But with Golden State, because Steph is always moving, you have to be prepared to switch, you have to be prepared to show, and he just going from one side of the court to the other. And then when you throw in Klay Thompson, who does the exact same thing, it's a fucking nightmare. Because now, you want, if you're late, the shot's gone. So because you want to be on top of it, you start showing early. You might start doing something early. And then if your teammates are on point and they're reading, if they have high basketball IQ, they recognize that, you know what? The minute this guy starts hedging, boom, I'm going to slip. Right? Mm-hmm. And you have I don't know if great Draymond Green's going to be back.
I think he will.
He's talking about everybody. They have to run decisions through him. I'm like, okay, he's trying to make a power move. He's been hanging around LeBron too much, right? And so I'm like, what happens if they don't consult you, Draymond? Does that mean you leave? Because truly, he is kind of like LeBron in the sense as a point forward. And there's a lot of times where I watch him, and sometimes you see his numbers, you're like, Draymond Green is ass. But then when he's playing and he's facilitating and he's calming stuff down and
he's leading the defense and stuff,
reading the deep, making the right pass, right? Then you're like, and directing guys where they should go and, communicating both offensive and defense. And you're like, oh yeah, I forgot that's why he's good, because he has a very high basketball IQ and he knows how to settle guys down.
Yeah,
and get them in their spots. Like it's night and day. Like when he's there, engaged and he's locked in, and the team just runs better because Steph's allowed to do what he does, and Draymond Green will facilitate. We'll get guys the ball, and he's not looking to score. He's just looking to,
I feel like he's lost his ability to score a little bit though this season.
You don't lose your ability to score. I just think he has to really. It's a mental thing. He just really has to, in his mind, flip that switch. I need to be a scorer.
Yeah, just fine.
Right? You don't lose your ability to score. Even if you get 50, just
I agree with that. I agree with that.
Your bones might be rickety and you can't jump and explode, but you don't lose. I don't think somebody like him loses his ability to score. He's probably just because it's hard for him to score. Scoring doesn't come easy for him.
Yeah.
Right? Because he's not a scorer. His J is suspect. So he has no confidence in that, right? So it's easy for guys to sit off of him, and that's why having a jump shot, is so important, or just having a shot.
Yeah.
Because you can score once you have a shot, you can score anywhere from the 3-point line in. And so because he doesn't have a shot, he's not thinking as an offensive player, he's just thinking more as a facilitator. But, the minute he flips that switch and it's like, I need to be more aggressive offensively and find that balance of doing both, I would say more facilitator, but recognizing, okay, I need to make that, even have like a mid-range shot, like at the free throw line or something, a little push shot or float or something that, they're going to sit off of me. I might be able to step in, shoot it, or, just give me a call. I'll break down his shot for him. There's no extension in his legs. He is all arms, and his shit is off, man. Pulls off his shot, but whatever. I thought I was giving shooting tips, but come to call me.
But but it's funny because the Grizzlies, like, shout out to them. You're kind of seeing them emerge. You know what I mean? Like as I think they're emerging a little earlier than at least what I was expecting. I'll touch on them in a little bit, but it was nice to see the younger guys kind of on that team kind of play the way that they were playing on Friday. And then even on Sunday when they beat Utah in Game 1, like it was impressive to watch. But I don't want to start with them. Actually, let's continue on with them for a second. How impressed have you been with the Grizzlies just from the start of the play-in until now?
I'm very impressed, and I love Dillon Brooks.
Yeah,
I love players like Dillon Brooks.
Yep. And
I love the Canadian players that ball like that. I love the guys like Tristan Thompson.
Hart.
I love guys like Dillon Brooks that they just compete, man. They're basketball players. They're grimy. They play to win. They're dogs. I always tell people you have to impact the game. And a lot of times, sometimes people think I'm talking about scoring. I'm like, no. You can impact the game without scoring. Like Tristan Thompson, you'll never ever want to play for him, and he'll impact the game because, look, he'll get loose ball. I'm watching the Brooklyn-Boston game. He'll get loose ball rebounds. He'll get a tip. He'll knock it out at the right time. And Dylan Brooks is just, he went to Carr, and Carr is known for having dogs, right? Yeah. And that gritty attitude. And he just brings that with, he brought that with him to, he went to prep in the States, and he brought that with him after he left Carr, and he brought that with him to Oregon and now to the NBA. And the fact that he's in his fourth year, the game's slower, he understands the game, knows the defenses, and it's just, after a while, you recognize Calvin's like, all I got to do is just this, and this. I just got to sit down and compete, move my feet. And every team needs an energy giver. And because you have energy takers and you have energy givers. You either one. And, Dylan Brooks is an energy giver. Tristan Thompson's an energy giver. And, you love guys like that. He comes out and he brings a lot of energy. He's a blue guy. And I just love watching Dylan play, man. And he's fearless. And
on both ends, too. He's not afraid to score. Because he can score, too. Yeah. That's the nice thing about him.
Yeah. And so, love guys like that. The energy giver guy that's always talking, that's in man's face. And he's, he's saying the right things offensively and defensively. And he's a hard worker. So it's not like he's telling guys to do something and he's not working hard with guys. You just dismiss him. So
yeah,
I'm so happy with the way the Grizzlies are playing. As a basketball purist, you love to see that because, again, as a coach, you'll always say, you always preach, all you have to do is just compete at any level. It doesn't matter what level you're playing at, from 10-year-old boys to the NBA. If you just compete, you always give yourself a chance.
Absolutely.
And you see the Grizzlies competing, and you love that. And I like how John Morant is stepping up and playing. And I wasn't sure how, because the playoffs, that's what it's all about. And sometimes, not that guys don't want to do well, but, if it's their first time in the playoffs, they might, they're not experienced. So they don't know some of the nuances, right? They might be going too fast, right? Yeah. But John Morant looked really good. He looked comfortable. He had a good pace to his game. He wasn't sped up. He wasn't out of control. He was, so they look good, man. They look good. They look like a solid team that just played hard. And so hopefully they can keep it up. Hopefully, because the thing about young teams is they're inconsistent.
Yeah. And
so you hope that, they can keep it up. Somebody's going to, keep them grounded, keep their heads focused, not getting too high and too low and just relax. They haven't done anything yet.
And you know what? And another, I guess, another nod to Brooks, because you look at Steph's stats. I mean, you can't argue with the stats from that last playing game, but he played him as well as you could play Steph. Honestly, He was on his hip the whole game. And some of the shots Steph makes, I mean, it's just, there's nothing you can do. Nobody in the world can stop it, but the energy that he made him work. And that's all you can ask for. That's all you can ask for. And as you know, when you get to this level, of basketball, especially like that superstar level, especially superstar elite scoring level, you're not going to stop guys. You know what I mean? But you can make them work to get their shots and drain some of their energy. That's all you can do. You know what I mean? I thought he did that as well as I've seen anybody do it, especially this year. Like I wouldn't even say amazed because I know he has that ability, but he did a great job. And I mean, I know Steph ended up with 39 points, and it was pretty much, I think he was like 11 for 24. Like he was almost 50% from the field, but like he worked for every one of those shots, and that's, like I said, that's all you can ask for. But with that said, too, I am surprised, but then really thinking back on it, like they always had a chip on their shoulder mentality. And I mean, as a franchise, as a culture, since the grit and grind days, but I feel like they've taken the remnants of that grit and grind days and kind of made it their own. You know what I mean? Because even last year, like, yeah, they were in a playing game last year. They lost in the last game, but even last year with the whole thing with Iguodala didn't want to play a game for the franchise, and they let it be known, like, yo, we don't want you on this team if you don't want to be here, and guess what? We can't wait to see you. Like, and I mean, it was guys like Brooks that was saying that, and you're like, yo, this guy's in his second year on a rookie contract talking this talk, but I'm like, I loved it. I loved it because I'm like, yo, like these guys are showing you they're not afraid. They want their stuff now. You know what I mean? Like, you don't want to be with us? Okay, you get the middle fingers. Like, we're going to keep it moving. And it's like, that's the same energy they rolled into, you know, coming to this season. It's the same energy they rolled into with the play-in games. And that's what they brought to Utah. And don't get me wrong, I still think Utah's going to win the series, especially when Mitchell gets back, which I think is going to be game 2, especially the way he was bickering about not playing game 1. So I expect him to come back, get his rhythm, win the series. But I think it's actually going to be a better series than what I initially thought, just because of that energy that they bring every night. They kind of understand what they got to do now, you know.
Yep.
And they're playing with house money too, you know? Like, there's no championship expectations. I don't think a lot of people expected them to be here at this part of their process. So, like, they're playing with house money, so they go hard. I love it.
They might be the Denver Nuggets when they had Dikembe Mutombo and they upset
Seattle
the Supersonics.
Yeah. I mean, it's a possibility because they got the dogs on that team to do it, you know. So it is a possibility. You can't, like, I don't think, like, you wouldn't, as good as Utah is, I wouldn't be stunned if that happened. I wouldn't be like rocked off my chair if that happened, you know. Like, you could definitely see it. But, and I mean, this doesn't even just go to John and Dylan. Like, you know, they missed Jared Jackson most of the year as well. He's come back, you know, and I think he's a very lively, skilled big, which I like, especially when you see him in person. Xavier Tillman, he's been solid this year. I'm a fan of Desmond Bane's game as well. They're just all on one page. I love to see it, and I think, like, if this can go like even 6 games, I'm happy with them. I'm happy with them. With that said, I'm gonna pivot a little bit here. Why can't the Clippers figure out Luka?
Nobody can figure out Luka. I just think Luka's he's a scorer, man. He's a professional scorer. The guy's a basketball player, and I don't think anybody can figure him out. Like, he he's not super fast. He's just going to lull you, play at a speed. He's great at changing speeds. He's great at angles, and he knows how to attack. And so he's at a level where there's certain players, you can't stop them. You can only try to make them work hard. But what's dangerous, to me, Luka's like Harden, right?
Yeah.
To me, Luka's just like Harden. It's when you have a very high IQ basketball player at 6'7", who could see the defense, see things coming. It's very hard to stop that. Very hard. And so.
And skills. And with the ball in his hand like 80% of the time. Exactly.
Right. So, where are you going to come from? He knows you can see where the double team's coming from. He knows he knows how to get to he knows where he wants to score from, whether he's on the right side of the court, the left side of the court, and then he's a chess player, right? That's what scorers do. They play chess and they anticipate where they're thinking moves ahead. You rarely see Luka from the top of the key, right? Yeah. He's either on the right side of the court or the left side of the court. And, for me, that's how I like to score, right? I like to score. I rarely go from the top of the key, right side or the left side. Right. And you have certain moves that you do on the right side. You have certain moves that you do on the left side. You have counters and counters on top of counters. So, I don't think anybody could stop Luka. But they're going to put the Terminator on him. And so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I think they have to at this point. Like, it's funny because I think judging from what you saw in the bubble and then even like this season too when they've played each other, I don't disagree with what you're saying, but I just think for the Clippers, he's just a bad matchup for them right now. Like, he's kind of figured out this team. He just kind of figured them out. And to add to what you're saying, the fact that he's not the fact that he's just 6'7", but he's got size. You know what I mean? Like, he's thick. Where it's like it's not easy to move him from his spots. He's a pretty solid kid. And this is the thing that I always talk about with basketball, where and this is why I love basketball, where I always say basketball is about foundation of skills and mastering that foundation. It's not about athleticism. And I think when you see guys like Luka, even guys like Harden, even though Harden is athletic, but some of those guys where you're like, how is this guy getting 30-something a night and he can't be stopped? But this is why. The fact that he's mastered the fundamentals and he's mastered his pace at this stage already, at this stage of his career, which is so young, like, he's only going to get better from here. But the fact that like guys like a Paul George, like he has his way with Paul George half the time, and Paul George is a really good defender, but it isn't about the athleticism. When you can put the athleticism with what on top of the skills, that's where you become truly amazing. But if you can master the foundations, master the fundamentals, master those skills, going left hand, right hand, doesn't matter where you go on the floor. It doesn't matter. Like nobody can rush you at that point. Like the game slows down and nobody can rush you to where you want to go. You're going wherever you want to go at the speed that you want to take it at. And I think he's like a living example of this every time you watch them play the Clippers, because it's like they got two of the best wing defenders in the game and he just has their way with them. And now, mind you, I think I've been saying this, like I think at this stage now, just throw Kawhi on him. Just throw him on him and just, let Kawhi fight through the screens and just let him go one-on-one on Kawhi. And if he takes out Kawhi, then shit, tip your hat to him. But to me, I'm like, I'm not throwing him on Morris. I'm like, you're going to give him different looks at certain points, but to me, the primary defender has to be Kawhi at this stage.
Yes, and that's what they're going to do, because you can't go down.
Yeah, they have to at this point.
You can't go down 0-2 going back to Dallas.
No.
Maybe it was something that you might, wait till later on in the series, but
nah, just do it from now.
You gotta do it now.
Just do it from now. And I think because of how they're switching the double team, not the double teams, but they're working the pick and roll on anybody that Zubac is guarding. I think maybe this is where you start Serge. He can move a little better, he has a little bit better mobility going side to side laterally. So maybe this is the better way to go. And then just have Zubac coming off the benches for this series, because I think they're gunning for him every time on a pick and roll, and it's not working out well. And on top of that, guys, in this NBA especially, they always switch, which sometimes I'm like, yo, why don't they just fight through some of these screens? Like, what I mean? Like they always switch. Just fight through it.
Right.
So I think with Kawhi, like that's what has to happen here. Just fight through them screens, because I think, obviously once you slow down Luka, like the team isn't deep enough to roll with the Clippers.
Yeah, it's a lot of lazy. You see some lazy shit in the NBA right now. Guys just.
It drives me crazy.
It's like coaching my, when I coach high school basketball, my high school basketball team, the lazy switch. Oh, switch. I'm like, there's no screen. Why do you need to switch? Just fight through it, man.
Yeah.
And in fact, forget the switching. Blast the screen. So, when they go, just have the big come out hard and make it look like a trap, and then get the ball out of his hand and then rotate back. Like, why are you switching? And they want to keep the ball in Luka's hand, and they want to create a mismatch when you do switch, so they can take advantage of it. So fucking blast the pick and roll, look to trap it, get the ball in Luka's hands, and then you're good. Then let somebody else beat you.
Yeah, I agree. I was always taught, like, if somebody's setting the screen, you run through that person on the screen. Like, run through him like you're trying to run through a linebacker. And then the second time he's coming back for that screen, he may not come the same way the second time. So it's like, I don't know.
Well, when I mean blast, it's not, well, that'd be an offensive foul, but I mean, like,
a defensive foul, but I'm saying a defensive foul, like a thing, which is fine. You take it. You may take it that one or two times just to show face. But go on.
Yeah, what I mean is the defender just hedges really hard.
Right.
Just hedges really hard, and so instead of showing, like, sometimes the guards come off the screen, they kind of do a soft hedge. They stick their hands out, or in this case, they're switching. You should just hedge really hard and blast, and look to trap.
It's funny when you watch the Clippers, though, don't you? I feel like the Clippers still play with a switch, and to me that when you play with a switch, that's only reserved for teams who's won.
Right.
I mean? Like, they haven't won a ring yet, and I still feel like they play with this switch. It's weird, man. It drives me nuts with them.
I'm like, I think that's more Paul George than this Kawhi, because that's not Kawhi.
No, that's not Kawhi at all. No.
But I'm like, how are these guys moving like they won something? Like, that's just the aura that comes off of them. That's just what emanates from them. Like, they won something, and they just move like they're in chill mode. And sometimes there's no sense of urgency in what they do.
Yeah.
It's like, are you guys kidding me? Like, it's weird. It's very weird.
Yeah, it drives me crazy, and that's the thing. And this is where I always say that part of it kind of falls on Kawhi a little bit, not just because he's not like he's also the mix of that. He's not, but with some leaders when they watch their team go through that, they're gonna get in their teammates' ass. You know what I mean? And he's so quiet, like he's not that guy. But I think he has to be more vocal in those situations because those guys haven't earned it. How much guys on that team has won a ring? Him, Serge, and Tyronn Lue. That's it, right? Like I think everybody else is, like they've just had playoff experience, but they haven't been on that biggest of stages. So I don't understand when they play with this kind of like lack of urgency for a team that hasn't won. Like it drives me crazy when I watch them play, man. So it's like. And especially after last year, like to me, this is when like that shouldn't even be in your vocabulary at this stage. Like we shouldn't even be mentioning that about you now.
Right.
You know? As of this recording, Game 2 of the Suns Lakers is tonight. After watching the Suns take Game 1 of the series, is it fool's gold, or do you think the Suns have a legitimate chance to maybe win this series?
I'm gonna say no.
Okay.
Until I see something different, I'm just going to assume it's like every year they lose. A team that's picked to win maybe loses the first game, and then it's a 7-game series, man.
Right.
And so, I usually start waiting till about Game 4, Game 5. Mm-hmm. That's where all the adjustments will be made at that point. But after Portland beat the Lakers last year in the first game.
Yeah,
everybody was creaming themselves. So the Lakers are going to lose. I'm like, yo, relax. As much as I don't want LeBron to win, so his fans can say stupid stuff. It ain't over yet. So, so I'm not excited yet. They came out, they played hard. That seems to be LeBron's MO from that. He chills. He sees what they do the first game, how they're playing, and then they take over. They make the adjustment.
Yeah,
and they just start, see what they're coming with. So, I thought was great. I like Booker though because he's a disciple of Kobe Bryant, so he's channeling his inner Mamba mentality, and he's a student of Kobe Bryant. He loves Kobe Bryant. He wants to play like Kobe Bryant. So, I'm gonna go with the Lakers, but I want to see what Dylan Brooks do, and it's gonna be a good series. I hope.
Yeah, like the last series. I mean, the last part I did. I mean, I think they're gonna win that series. I think out of the top 3 teams in the West, the team that you want to see probably the most is probably the Suns, just because of the lack of a playoff experience, but. I think the Suns have a maybe 40-60 chance of winning. And I like the fact that they didn't show nerves, Game 1, which tells me this series can probably go longer than I anticipated. And look, man, I loved everything that Booker did on Sunday. That was awesome. Like he played with no fear. Like he played like he was maybe almost too ready, to play his first playoff game. So,
right.
And I mean, what did he end up with? Like 34-9. I think that's like the highest like debut playoff game that for a Suns player since Barkley and when he was an MVP year in '93. So almost 30 years ago. Like that was awesome. Like that was a great performance. And I just love how he just came out and he tried to own the court on as the best player on the floor, regardless of his stature, regardless if LeBron and AD are on the floor. Like he tried to own it. And I love that. Like I really like that a lot.
Yep.
I think it's funny in this series. If the Suns are to really have a real shot, I think Ayton is the key. Like I don't expect him to go. What did he go last? Did he miss a shot? I think he went like 10 for 11 or something like that. Something like that. I mean, we're not expecting that, but if he can be close to what he is on Sunday, like it's gonna be, he can make it more difficult for the Lakers to advance because. I think with him, it's like you kind of like, at least for me when I watch him play, sometimes like I wonder about him mentally. Like if you wanted to be more aggressive given his size, because I don't know if you've seen him in person. O'Neil, he is a massive guy. He's huge. He is huge, but he doesn't always use that size. You know what I mean? To his advantage sometimes. And I know it's a different league, and I'm not saying you got to throw him in the post 20, 30 times a game, but I'm just saying like when you see him in person, he is so massive. Like, he's got to be, I think that's on him, too, to be a little more aggressive. So I think if he keeps that energy up, it makes it for a better series. But I still think the Lakers are going to win because, I'm not expecting AD to get 13 points or anything close to that the rest of the series. So that's definitely going to change things. But it will make for a longer series, and I think that's what you want. I think it'd be more of a worry if it was like back in the day when it was like 5-game series. Mm-hmm. That's where the urgency would more kick in. But because, as you said before, it's 7 games, it gives you like a game or two to gauge, which before back in the day you never had a chance to do that. You lost game 1, it was like, damn, okay, we got to win game 2. We can't go 0-2, because in the next game it's over. So it gives you a little bit more leeway. You know what I mean? Yep. Should we put more respect on the Hawks name based on what we saw after game 1?
I mean, it's hard, man. They're playing the Knicks.
Right.
It's like, it's one thing if it's like Brooklyn or Boston, an established team. So, the Brooklyn Knicks only had D Rose, right? So I'm not really. I mean, Trae Young definitely played well. They did a great job. Nathan Miller did a great job of coaching them. So, but I don't know. I don't know if I don't know if I'm ready yet. I think when they beat an established team, a team that's proven, that's been proven in the past.
That ain't gonna be this year then.
then I'll, well, I mean, like Boston. We know Boston. They're good, right? Or the Nets is good, or the Heat, right?
Right.
So some team that's the Heat was in the finals last year, like some team like that. Like, and once they get past the Knicks. I should say once, but if they get past the Knicks and, if they're doing the same thing to
Philly,
their fifth seed, so yeah, Philly, right? So if they're doing, if they're doing something like that to Philly or whatever, then it's like, okay, I'll recognize you, but not yet. I want to see what they do when they beat Pop, if they get past, but they start playing whoever in the next round, Philly, and go from there.
I'm not a big Trae Young fan, but I had to give him his respect watching that game because it's kind of like it's kind of like a reflection of how the second half has been, especially when with Nate got the job. For his first playoff game, he was really poised. You know what I mean? I thought he played that position as efficiently as you could possibly play it in game 1. Like he took the shots when it was given, he took the opportunities when it was given. He made sure everybody got the ball. He controlled pace. He controlled tempo. And I think with that, it made everybody else kind of relax and get into their sets easier, because none of those guys on that team, there wasn't any indecisive moments. Like, I think he was a big part of that reason as to why that was happening. And then of course he finishes off the Knicks with that last shot. But with all that said, like, I just like the energy that he emanated. You know what I mean? So going forward, I'm like, yeah, like I think this, I wouldn't be surprised. Now I think the series is really a toss up anyway, but. It's honestly, I think if the Knicks don't win game 2, I think the series is over.
Really?
I think so. I think if they go back to Atlanta 0-2, I'm like, I don't know. Like if and again, this is all based on if Trae is gonna play this way for the rest of the series.
I've seen it where the home team, doesn't win the series, right? Like so, the visiting team takes the first 2, and then they go back, and then it's then the other team takes the next 2. So, based on all that, yeah, I'm not ready to. I wouldn't write off the Knicks yet. I think they hang their hats on defense. They were in the game. I think Knicks are going to win this game. I don't think Atlanta is going to beat the Knicks. That's what Thibodeau does. He makes adjustments. He's a defensive-minded coach.
Mm-hmm. And they were in. They were in that.
And remember, Julius Randle was a fucking no-show. So if that guy figures it out, right? And again, this is why I love the playoffs, right? This is why this is where I really start seeing who's who. Like, the casual fan, they get excited about regular season, blah blah blah. I'm like, yeah. Wait till the playoffs. Then I start seeing who. Then you can really see who's who steps up and who falls back. You know what I mean?
Right.
So. People are like, oh, yeah, Julius Randle, he'll be good, next game. I'm like, what indication in the past, or what has he done in the past to indicate that this is what's, like AD, you could say like AD, right? Yeah, the 13 points, you could say, okay, AD, because he's done that. He's had a bad game come back. What has Julius Randle done to make you believe that?
I can tell you, it's easy. He's done nothing.
Exactly. This might be him.
This is the first playoff game he's played, so you know.
Exactly. This might be who he is when the lights. Because certain bands, when the lights come on, you know, first time or not, they're balling, right?
Yeah.
And you see that like Trae Young. You see that like, you know, Devin Booker. Like when the lights come on, these guys start balling, first time or not. So when the lights came on for this guy just started doing like, what are you doing? Like this is where you lock in more and just like, okay, I relish this moment. You know, there's a certain level of focus. So this might be who he is. Everybody's like, oh no, I expect him to do better. Why? Based on the regular season? We know regular season, that's just preseason. The playoffs is the real season. So We'll see. We'll see how he bounces back. But he's in the mecca of basketball, New York, and you better step that shit up because that media will freaking
they'll tear you apart.
Destroy him.
It's not even like they're gonna wait till the series is over to do it. They'll do it by Wednesday night.
Oh, of course.
Like if they don't win by Wednesday night, they go to Atlanta 0-2 and he's not playing well. They're gonna tear him apart. All that MVP chatting is gonna be, you know those page 6 headlines. Like they're gonna go crazy. They're gonna go crazy. So, but you know, with all that said, for him, it's one game. It's game one. It's like, okay, we got that out the way. You know, there ain't nothing you can do about it now. What's gonna happen going forward now? You know what I mean? Like that to me is like what you want to see. Was that just like a hiccup? You know, or is this the real thing, as you're saying? So it's gonna be interesting to see how he comes off. But I mean, they're in that game, so I don't want to make it seem like Atlanta blew them out. We all know they didn't. It was a good game too. So they're right in there. And
that's what I said. Julius trying to play like hot garbage.
Yeah.
And the Knicks were still in the game.
Man, I really like Quickly, man. I really think that's going to be a good point guard.
See, and that's one of the games I never got to see just because family stuff.
Yeah.
But how did RJ do as a whole? Because, you know, I just saw the one dunk, but how did he?
He brought the energy. Like, stat-wise, when you look at it, I kind of liked how he played, actually, this game one. Like, he brought a certain energy. And I watched more of the second half, but the energy he brought, especially around the glass and, you know, making the right plays and stuff, like I thought, you know, for his first playoff game, like it was solid. Mm-hmm. You know, I think what did he have, like 14, 16 points, I think, something like that. But he was solid to me, you know, like he was solid. I actually liked how he played in the second half. Right. You know, like he took what the defense was giving him. You know, he tried to take advantage of certain points. You know, crash the boards when he could. I liked how he played. How he played, but we'll see. Like I said, it's, you know, I think that series is gonna go 7 games to me. So. You know, so I don't think this is going to be the last of it. And both teams are inexperienced and young. That's the issue too. But they both got good veteran coaches, so that's why the adjustments game to game is going to be interesting with those two young teams. Is there anyone that you see right now that realistically should worry about getting a quick playoff exit in terms of the contenders? Just from watching like this, you know, this first few, you know, the first 3 days of the playoffs so far. I don't think so either. No. I don't think so either. I think the only one I would maybe say should maybe be a little bit worried, and I have them making the conference finals, I would think is the Clippers, just because of the matchup.
I know. I was thinking, that was in the back of my mind too. Like maybe the Clippers. Yeah. Maybe.
They're the only
one. That ain't gonna happen.
Yeah, I don't think so either. But like, you know, if I had to pick a contender, I would say it's going to be them, just because they had the series with Dallas last year. They struggled, you know, to get through that, and now you have them again, and you're already struggling, you know. So it's like, you know. But I also think if they get through that series, I think it could like propel them to go. They could possibly propel them to go all the way, at least to the finals, anyway. But should you be surprised, or should anybody be surprised that Milwaukee's basically handling the Heat the way they've been handling them?
Yes, I expected more.
Okay.
I'm not sure what's going on with the Heat, man. Like, you know, they had a great bubble and great playoff run last year, and just all of this year, they don't really seem, you know, together. And I don't know what's going on. I don't know. Something's going on, because clearly it'll probably come out after. But
yeah, I mean, I know it's a lot of injuries and a lot of COVID, but go on.
But you know what? And then when you actually think about the Bucks, though, right? And I told people this is who the Raptors should have went after, was Drew Holiday, right? And that guy's, you have a perimeter defender in Drew Holiday. You have a perimeter defender in PJ Tucker. And then you have an interior defender in Brook Lopez and Giannis. So it's tough, man. It's tough. It's tough there. Deep. And then now you don't have, Middleton doesn't have to guard the best player, right?
Right.
You put PJ Tucker on the best perimeter defender. And then so that frees up Middleton to be a scorer.
Yeah, he's not taking away that same energy. But that's funny, the last time you're on the pod, this is what I was saying about Milwaukee, where I kind of like them more than last year because of, like, I think Drew Holiday is an upgrade. I don't think it's a major leap between him and Bledsoe, but it's a sizable leap. And I'm thinking more playoffs because he plays defense. You know what I mean? And the team plays defense to begin with, but he's a better defender than Bledsoe. And he's a better perimeter shooter than Bledsoe. That too. And he's a better playmaker. He's a better player overall.
He basically can do exactly what Bledsoe does, but he's taller and stronger.
And better.
Just as quick. And, he's just better. He's definitely an upgrade from Bledsoe because he's taller than Bledsoe. He's athletic. He could guard. They say he could guard down. He can guard 1, 2, 3.
Yep.
So they got they fixed it on defense. And, they freed up Middleton to be the closer, right?
Yeah.
The guy that's going to hit big buckets. And, what? And they finally did what I said they should do. Stop having Giannis bring up the ball so much. Have him play off the ball, flashing, catch,
Yeah.
Like, get the ball out of his hands, man.
Keep them guessing.
Yeah. It's easy to guard him when he's bringing the ball up the court. It's harder to guard the guy when he doesn't have the ball in his hands because he's moving. He can flash in, flash out, circle back. You know what I mean? Like, you see him bring up the ball, you know exactly where he's coming from. When he doesn't have the ball, he's on the move. Now, whoever is guarding him has to be engaged with him, right? And so, I think that's it frees up Giannis more if you don't have him bring up the ball. And sometimes that's what coaches have to do. Just like, listen, this is not working. You bringing up the ball. Let's try something else.
Yeah.
Right. Let's we don't have to go to it all the time. But let's instead of you're coming down freaking 89% of the time. Let's shrink that down to maybe half and half.
Yeah.
Or less. 40, 60.
Yeah.
Just have you moving a lot, flashing closer to the basket. Set a back screen for a shooter. Then as soon as then flash to the middle, catch the ball closer to the rim and make a move, right? As opposed to just bringing it down and trying to be a point forward like LeBron. Right?
And I think that's where they get caught up with, right? Like, I think the team got caught up in having him be like that point forward, which is fine. Yeah. It kind of accelerated his skill set in a lot of ways, but at the same time, I'm like, I don't know have you seen Milwaukee in person? Like, seen Giannis play in person? Like, that guy is so long. Like, even at a distance, O'Neil, you're looking at his limbs and you're just like, Jesus. Like, he just goes on forever. So it's like, if you can have that guy closer to the basket, at least, a little bit more, you know what I mean? It's advantageous to the whole team. Like, you got to double him. He can pass. You know what I mean? He can split the double team because he has that skill, and he's so long. You're not going to, if he's getting a hook off in the paint or he's doing a little runner, the chances of that being blocked is like next to zero.
Exactly.
And he's so strong on top of that too. Like, the fact that he's doing like mid, like posting up on the mid block and the low, I'm like, when I was watching him do that this year, I'm like, okay, if they're going to continue doing this in the playoffs, this is a different Milwaukee team. Because we always talk about where the game is now. I totally understand that, but you have to still play basketball at the same time. And this is the stuff that drives me crazy because I'm like, use your genetics. You're 7 foot tall. You're strong as hell. You're an ox. Maybe being 5 feet from the basket sometimes, starting from that point, is probably a good thing. You know what I mean? So it's exactly. Like that part of it, I don't understand. So, the fact that, like I said, Drew Holiday, I thought it was such a big pickup for them, and I thought, I'll continue to say that, getting PJ Tucker, I think was huge.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was huge.
Oh, totally.
And then you see it too because that, the end of game one, who blocks Jimmy Butler's shot? Drew Holiday, right? Yeah. So, like, I think going forward, it's. Look, and I'm not saying Miami doesn't deserve their accolades and they don't deserve their roses from what they got last year, going to the finals and stuff in the bubble like that. I give them all respect for that. But at the same time, I've been saying this all the time. I'm like, would guys like Tyler Hero been going off if it was under the normal circumstances of the playoffs, where you're going on the road and seeing, 20,000 fans screaming in your face? Are you still hitting 5 and 6 threes in a row? Maybe he could, maybe he doesn't. You know what I mean? But it's like, I think he's kind of regressed closer to that line. You know what I mean? To where he was before. You know what I mean? Where we saw him as a player in the bubble and even in the conference finals, he showed like, man, could this guy be a superstar? Or a high-level all-star? But it's like, okay, maybe that potential is still there, but I don't think he's at that point yet. I think that the lack of not having fans made stars out of certain guys where it's like, I'm not sure if they're ready for that yet. Right. And I always say that with Miami. I'm like, now that it's in a regular format, they're going to be a tough team. Like, you don't really want to see that team in the first round, especially. But I'm like, I don't think Milwaukee should be afraid of them. Mm-hmm. Especially this version of the Milwaukee team. They shouldn't be afraid of them. So it'll be interesting. But oh man, I don't know how I can avoid this, because this is not a playoff question, but this has dominated culture and sports for the last week and change, and I can't not talk about it. But Kwame Brown, give me your thoughts.
So I think what's captivating about Kwame Brown is the fact that the man has been silent for so long. I don't recognize this person, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I'm like, who is this guy? Like, this is Kwame Brown? Like, I don't recognize this guy, right? And he's coming for people's heads, right? Obviously, I'm a big fan. I'm a defender of Stephen A. Smith and MJ. Because what comes out, he said some stuff that are poignant and, makes sense. This tearing down black, I'm like, dude, you're tearing down black men. That's what you're doing, because you're making it personal. I don't think, it's a fact, Kwame. Like, that's like, if Stephen A. said you're 7 foot and you have black hair, that's a fact, right? He's not making that up. If you have small hands, that's a fact, right? If on the basketball court you can't demonstrate proper footwork to get an open shot, that's a fact. He's not making that up. The tape is right there. I can see that. Or because I know basketball, but somebody that doesn't know basketball might not see it. So he's pointing out he doesn't have no footwork, right? Mm-hmm. And then your mental. Well, what's your mental about? And so those are facts, right? And so that's what now, Stephen A. is not getting paid to put it, make it like a bed of rose and make it nice. He's about being straight. So I don't think he was tearing down Kwame Brown. What I thought was interesting though was, what I thought out of that I didn't know was that actually Jordan didn't want Kwame Brown.
Yeah.
Because people always tied Kwame Brown to Jordan. Like he drafted Kwame Brown. But I love the fact that Kwame Brown cleared it up. He goes, Jordan never wanted me. He drafted me to trade. I was only drafted to be traded for Elton Brand, right? Because people like Jordan doesn't know any, Kwame, look at Kwame Brown. And like it was like this, that was his legacy of drafting Kwame Brown. But it was like, he never really wanted me. And then, it's like Jordan was on me. I'm like, yeah. There's a lot of players before Kwame. There's players before Kwame Brown, and there's players after Kwame Brown that guys get in them, right? Guys challenge their mental toughness, right? Because one, you're in the big boys league now. You're getting paid millions of dollars, right? So you're going to be criticized, right? So I don't want to hear that, when the criticism is there, he's a kid, right? But then, at the same time, whether Steven Jack or some other team was talking shit about him, he's a man, right? Like, well, you can't. I'm a man, When you're a teammate, I'm a man, and
I think there's level. That there's certain points to that. But let me not cut you off. Continue with your point.
Right, but my point is, you're a kid and then you're a man. It's either you're a man. Once you turn 18, you're a man, and then there's certain people are gonna hold your hand and comfort you, and sort of try to build up your confidence. And there's some people who are going to push and prod and test you and get into you to try to and in some cases to break you, right? And that's what Jordan was known to do because of what he went through as a basketball player. Guys were trying to break him. Guys were punching him, clotheslining him, ripping him down, when he's going up for a basket. Guys are doing all these stuff to him, that they're trying to break him. And so this is how Jordan knows how to try and build guys or to break guys or not break guys, see what they're made of. So for me, he said some good stuff. What came out of it was you're blaming other people. Well, Jordan was hard on me. Like, yeah, and that's just you are who you are. You're not a mentally strong guy, and that's just who you are, right? And when you're blaming other people, because other people went the other way, other people became tougher. And then you hear stories about him playing. You hear stories about him playing like he doesn't want the basketball. Like Kobe told a story, like Kwame was like, I didn't want he was like, they called to play for him, and they're walking down the corner. He's like telling Kobe, I don't want the ball. Right? The guy wasn't mentally strong, man. He wasn't built for it. And he got paid. And as we know, a lot of guys in the NBA, they're not good and they get paid because of probably who their agent is and, some of the deals that they're locked in. The guy is a 6.6 career average points and 5.5 career average rebounds at 7 foot. So as a number one pick, and he made $63 million in 12 years. So at the end of the day, you're listening because it's a guy who hasn't said a word, not one single word. And the fact that the fact that he's speaking as much as he is and coming for people's heads, you're listening, right? You're listening. You're like, oh, what is Kwame? It's entertaining. You listen to what, but some of the stuff, I'm like, yeah, Kwame, that's you. Like other people are like, yeah, man, he's right. I'm like, no, he's not.
Well,
because Stephen A. to me, because when you're not making it personal, when you're laying out facts, you're not tearing anybody down. That's facts. You're pointing out facts. Tearing somebody down is when you make it personal. Is when you start talking about them and degrade them and put them down. If you're a shit basketball player, you're a shit basketball player. You know why? And you also know why? Because we all do it. We always sit there and be watching a game, and a guy's playing like, and what do we say? This guy's playing like a bag of balls. This guy's shit. Trade this guy. Stephen A. just gets paid to do it. He just gets paid to do it. But he does it in a way where he's still not making it personal. He talks about the guy's game, and he keeps it to the guy's game. And so I don't know how you're tearing somebody down when you're stating facts that this is what you are. You're not a great basketball player, you don't put in the work to be better. So we're not going to make excuses for you, pat you on the back because your feelings got hurt, and now you're coming out with it.
But I don't know if it's necessarily that though to that degree. Like where I will say is like I look at it from the perspective of like, you know what, in his position. And I guess this is the same connotation for life. Every man has a right to defend himself. He like for him, I don't think he's sitting there saying like I was supposed to be the star, but this guy held me down. This guy held me down. Like he knew who he was. Like when you hear him talking, you hear like his rants and his his YouTube clips and stuff like that. When you watch them, like yeah, he's making it very personal. He is not peace. He's not playing with the politically correct dialogue right now. He really isn't. But at the same time, it's like some of the stuff he says, you're kind of like, shit, that kind of makes sense. Shit.
Such as what?
Such as, well, I mean, I know you one of the things you mentioned was the fact that like Jordan never wanted him to go there. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And I think Chicago at that time was playing the Bulls and not the Bulls, but the Wizards and the Clippers off each other, and then the Clippers won because they're the ones that ended up getting Elton Brand, right?
Right.
And the type of team Jordan wanted to build, especially when he was coming back with Elton Brand, a 20-10 guy in his first 2 years in the league coming from Duke, would have helped immensely. Of course, not an 18-year-old high school kid that's raw, and you got to teach him he's got to learn the game and stuff. Like Jordan at that stage of his career. Of his life coming back he's not looking to do that. You know what I mean? At the same time, he's not looking to build a high school player and try to get him. And it's like, yeah, like I understand, like, yeah, he might not have been the most mentally strong player at the time when he was playing, but a lot of players coming out of high school I mean, for every Kobe Bryant, there's a lot of high school. Like, it's not like Kobe Bryant was like a rare breed when it came to high school player. Like, Garnett was one. You know, even T-Mac, his first year kind of struggled until they got Darryl Walker out of there.
His first 2 years he struggled.
Right, but I'm saying like mentally, like the first until they got Darryl Walker out of there and Butch Carter came in right before Vince was there. He even says it like it was depressing. You know, and I still remember Walker's famous quote. He was saying like, "This guy's going to be out of the league in 2-3 years." I mean, he was completely wrong. But that's to tell you, like, how some of these coaches and some of these people don't want to develop a high school player. You know, like you look at
they don't want to. It was sorry to cut you off. It was the same thing with. I remember Lou Williams was talking about his first 2 years in the league, and I forgot Lou Williams was out of high school as well. He sat the bench.
Monte Ellis. Yep.
You look at what's his name? I remember JJ Redick. Remember JJ Redick coming out of Duke, and he went to Orlando, and the coach there never played him. Like, a lot of coaches don't like playing rookies. So imagine high school. They don't like playing rookies that were like 2-3 years in
winning wooden awards and shit.
Yeah, coming out of college. You know, so imagine, you know,
a
coming out of high school,
18-year-old player
coming out of high school, and all they were doing was playing AAU, right? So
and raw.
So yeah, you know, a lot of these guys have to go through that mentally, right? And it's. You know, just that they had Jordan, and Jordan doesn't mess around. Because I remember T-Mac was depressed. You know, I remember people like T-Mac is hanging out in high school. I'm like, well, yeah, he's just out of high school, so of course he's going to be hanging around high schools, right? Just because he's in the NBA. Don't forget he's an 18-year-old, right? But yeah, he was depressed. And, you know, because these guys, you come in and you're around men, you're around grown men, and it's like, okay, who are you? And back then, these guys were getting paid a lot of money, and like, dude, what did you do? You haven't done anything. Yeah. And you're getting paid all this money, so you know with all that money, you're going to get criticized, right?
Look at Jermaine O'Neal. Like Jermaine O'Neal only started shining
when
year 5 when he left Portland after 4 years of sitting on the bench.
It was the same thing in Portland. Yeah, it was the same thing in Portland. Like these guys all have horror stories as high school guys coming out. You know, Kobe Bryant sat the bench, right, with Del Harris.
Right.
So Kobe Bryant, you know, the guy wouldn't play Kobe. So a lot of these high school guys come out and they sit the bench, right? Because one, you know, the coaches feel, okay, these guys definitely not ready physically and mentally, right? This is a grind. And, you know, what experience did they, you know, LeBron was the only one. LeBron was the only one that played right away and, you know, didn't have to go through all that stuff. Yeah. But, you know, it's entertaining to a degree, and you got to be careful what you say about Kwame Brown. But, you know, he's like, he wants to fight everybody. He wants to fight Stephen A. Yeah, and I like the way Stephen A. is handling it, too. Stephen A. is not even responding because he's like, I never said anything personal about him. So if he wants to personally attack me, that's fine.
Well,
everything I said was facts.
But you know what? I think with him, it's obviously it's a buildup from all the years
of course. Oh yeah.
You know what I mean?
So
that's what I'm saying. Like in his defense, and this is why I'm like I kind of ride with him. Is like I'm like, when you listen to that, because I haven't seen First Take and all that, but like when you look at that Up in Smoke, the podcast with Gilbert Arenas, if you watch that segment where they were talking about Kwame Brown, they weren't really going hard at him, but I think he just had enough. Because this isn't new. Like for people to know, like he's been doing this pretty much for about a year when people were shitting on his name. Because anytime you think about it, really and truly, right? Yeah, he didn't reach his potential, he didn't do all that stuff, but like anytime his name comes up in the public eye, it is 1,000% negative all the time, and he never says anything. Most people who are considered a quote unquote bust don't say anything, you know. And I think he just hit his limit. And that's what I said. Every man has a right to defend himself, man, and he's just throwing flames. And like I said, you can dispute some of the things he's saying in terms of keeping it personal, but I think he lashed out, and then when guys are like, "Yo, he's dirt." His life is worth nothing. He's just a mad N-word. And doing all that stuff. And then Charlemagne's coming in and airing out his whole family history. You know what I mean? Like doing all that stuff. It's like, okay, like from that perspective, when it starts getting to that point, I really liked how Kwame handled himself.
Yeah.
Because people,
people start making it personal about him, about Kwame. So that when you're making it about personal, and that's why for me, in a way, I was like, for me talking about Stephen A. because Stephen A. was facts. But everybody else, when you start making it personal, it's a free for all. If you're going to talk about me, I'm going to talk about you. So when guys were talking about him personally, and especially Charlemagne the God, like I'm like, I didn't know that about him, but okay, His dad's a killer. His brother's a killer. His brother's one.
But
like,
O'Neil,
two brothers are killers.
O'Neil, what's crazy about that is a lot of the stuff that Charlemagne said in that rant that he did, Kwame didn't even know. Because he's not tight with certain parts of his family. So he's like like with his brothers and stuff being in jail. The only reason why Kwame even knew that, Charlemagne even knew that, is because Charlemagne,
he's from the same place.
He's from the same place. He went to high school with his sister.
Yeah.
So that's why he knows some of those stories. But Kwame was like, yo, I didn't even know some of that stuff. But he's like, but why are you going down this deep dive into my family when I'm having this conversation with Matt Barnes and Steven Jackson? You know what I mean? I'm going back and forth with those two. Why are you coming in here throwing shade? And why is, this one telling me I'm picking violence over everything? And it's like, yo, I'm not violent. I'm just saying my piece. I'm mad at those two guys, but why are you guys jumping in this? You know what I mean? So that's where I'm like, yo, the fact that everybody's apologizing and stuff now, I'm like, yo, good, man. Like, I think the biggest thing with this is, again, as you said, at the beginning was like, you don't even recognize this guy. Granted, I don't think a lot of us do, right?
Yeah, I'm like, who? I keep staring at as he's talking. I'm like, who is this guy?
He's like Karl Malone.
I'm like, he does look like Karl Malone. I'm like, who is this guy talking right now?
He sounds like Karl Malone, but looks like Big Daddy Kane, especially when he's wearing some of his outfits. But like really and truly, it's like I think people just thought this was like a weak-minded, slow guy. You know what I mean? Who doesn't have much to say, so we can kind of clown this guy. And he'll just go away, not thinking like, yo, this guy's actually smart and he's got a mouth on him. And I think it flipped on him in a way that like they weren't expected to see. And don't get me wrong, I'm not sitting here saying like, yo, I'm Team Kwame. I'm not watching All the Smoke anymore. Like, I'm going to still watch All the Smoke, Up and Smoke or whatever, All the Smoke, I mean. I think there was a quote that he said that was funny. It's like, you guys are ripping me, but won't have me on the show. So it's like, y'all sound like you want some of the smoke. You don't want all of the smoke. I was dying. I was laughing when he was saying that. But at this stage, I'm like, yo, I'm with it, man. Like when stuff like this is happening, I'm like, I think it's actually kind of cool to see. Like somebody's standing up for their name. Like, yo, their name means something. You know what I mean? Like he's got kids. You know what I'm saying? Like he's got family members. Like you don't want to every time the Brown name comes up in that community, it's just to be shitted on. And then, to kind of make this full circle in the game of life, both of us have been around NBA players and professional athletes and stuff, right? And you were one at some point in time too. You know how hard it is to make the league. You know what I mean? So like for me, I've learned, as I've gotten older, I find it kind of hard to call people bums and shit on people when they've made a league or a profession that only 1% of people get to make. And if they have made, like in such a situation like him, he was, regardless of what you want to say, his stats, whether he reached his potential, he was a 12-year veteran that made $65 million. We don't know what he's doing with his money. He sounds like he has businesses and farms and different things going forward. In the grand life of things, how are thousandaires shitting on a millionaire? You know what I mean? Like... I find it hard to sit there and rip a guy that's like, in the grand scheme of things, in the game of life, he's won. He doesn't have to work for anybody if he doesn't want to work for anybody. He's taking care of his mother. He's taking care of his family. He's got money left over, unless unless he's one of those guys on the 30 for 30 broke documentary, but it doesn't sound like he is. He's not, so in the grand scheme of life, like, again, how hard it is to make a professional sport. And to be in that climate for that length of time, you may be weak in comparison to like a Michael Jordan, sure. But in the game of life, you're way stronger than a lot of these people walking the earth mentally. You know what I mean? To kind of endure some of the things that they're enduring, especially from, when you hear his life story, like he really came from the mud.
Yeah.
So that's why it's entertaining, but at the same time, I like what I'm seeing from him. Every time he comes and he hits you with points, I'm like, oh, okay, Kwame, all right.
Yeah.
I'm like, every man has a right. That's the moral I get from all of this, man. Every man has a right, or every woman has a right to defend themselves, man, especially when it comes to their name. So I'm with it.
I'll just say this because people like, I'll say this. It's very hard to get to the NBA. There's some guys that are in the NBA that other guys are better than, but I know guys that are not in the NBA that are better than.
Absolutely.
And sometimes it just comes down to probably really who your agent is.
Yeah.
The more, I'm learning about this and talking to people, and it really and truly comes down to who your agent is. Like Pops Mensah-Bonsu, who played, his brother was my teammate.
Yeah.
When I was in junior college. And so Pops, when he was here with the Raptors, and, I love Pops because Pops was like he's a glue guy. He was getting rebounds and, getting the experts. And he was an energy giver. And he was obviously super athletic, just like his brother.
Yeah.
But Pops was never, ever on guaranteed contracts.
Yeah.
Right? And, I would talk to Pops. I'm like, yo, what the fuck are these guys dealing with? And he's like, O'Neil, it's just a business. It's just like the Raptors, when he was with the Raptors, they signed this one bum-ass dude that they never played. They signed him to a guaranteed contract and he never played. Pops kicking his ass in practice, playing over him. But he was signed to a guaranteed contract. And Pops wasn't. So Pops was getting 10 days and, signed, not even guarantees, just signed to here and for this long. And, and then even when I go back, when I was like a Donald Foyle, you remember a Donald Foyle on a Colgate?
Colgate, yep.
Oh, come on, man. That guy should not have been. I know he should not have been in the league? Because the Donald Foyle walked into my gym and I saw a kid who's 6'3" sit on the back of his neck and destroyed him. And my Donald Foyle, guys like Todd Fuller and Felton Spencer, these guys walked into my gym at St. Mary's in California, and my teammates destroyed these guys. These guys are in the NBA. So yeah, certain guys make it to the NBA. They're like, but it's like, really? Like, I see somebody like Kevin Pangos. But how the hell is Kevin Pangos not in the NBA? Right? This guy's a baller. From day one, he stepped on Gonzaga. Right? But they put David Stockton, John Stockton's son. Kevin Pangos came in, took over the role, took it from David Stockton. He put David Stockton on the bench. David Stockton coming off the bench backing up Kevin. And this guy gets to the NBA, right? So it's just like, how do certain guys get in and certain guys don't? And so, yeah.
Some of it is politics and stuff, too, of course.
Yeah,
right?
Sure, he came from the mud. But, like, it's... I would respect him more if he was a grinder and he really... he got drafted because he was a 7-foot guy that, back then they thought there was something of it.
And it wasn't a strong draft that year, too.
Exactly, right?
That's why because it wasn't just him. It was Eddie Curry. It was Tyson Chandler.
Yeah. So I hear people.
Sorry, go ahead.
I hear people say, honestly. I hear people say that like, okay, he's been where a lot of people have. I'm like, yeah, but it's not really, to me. It's not even like he really grinded and worked. He grew to be 7 foot, and somebody gave him a chance, and then he stuck around for 12 years, just getting paid, getting the veterans. He just did enough to stay there. Where there's guys who are ballers, who are good, and because they probably chose the wrong agent, right? And and a lot of times, honestly, Cal, too, this sometimes people just like they draft a guy and the guy's shit, but it's like, let's stick with them. Because if you're in the NBA, man, you're getting video sessions, you're getting breakdown of the game, your basketball IQ is going up, you're getting a lot of reps, you get a lot of shots up, you're playing against high level guys, your confidence goes up. You're just going to be a better defender. You're just going to be a better all-around offensive guy. And then once you figure out, if you're smart enough to figure out that you can find a role, you could last. And so, if Kwame Brown was a guy, I would respect Kwame Brown more if he was a second-round draft pick that just gutted it out and fought. And while he didn't, let's say, become one of the best, but he still fought and grinded and the guy got drafted because he was 7 foot, and then they kept him in the league because he was 7 foot, and that was it, right? Even guys like Kendrick Perkins, was fucking hot garbage, man. People like he was in the league, he was fucking hot garbage. Perkins, the guy shot an airball dunk, like what the fuck, right? So, again, he came out of high school, and somebody took a chance on him. He's big. Maybe he might amount to something. And
he lasted 13 years in the league himself.
And
he's on ESPN.
I would give more respect to the second round guys who didn't have a chance, I give more respect to guys like Fred VanVleet. I give guys who never, who didn't get drafted and you had to go work. I give my respect to that guy, the Spurs guy. Remember that guy that spent $150 to go to one of the tryouts, the G League tryout, and fucking made the Spurs team? Like, he just balled. He spent his own money. Like, those guys.
Yeah.
Those guys, I have, I would more say that about, like, yeah, look where they came from. Then somebody like Kwame Brown was a 7-footer, and they thought he had potential, and that's why he got in, and that's why he got $73 million.
And you know what, though? Do you say those same things if he went 10th overall?
Right.
You know what I mean? So some of it is that, too, is where you get drafted, too. Like, you know what I mean? Where that connotation, because, I mean, even like an Anthony Bennett, for example, like, if he went 10th overall, do people look at him that certain way? You know what I mean? Like, it's, some of it, too, is where you land, and that's not your fault. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's not your fault either.
Right, exactly. He should have got drafted to the Raptors. You got paid $100 million with Isaiah, because Isaiah Thomas is about paying black men. So, it's like, yo, you play for me? Yo, be Stewart? Here, let me give you $24 million. Right. Just sit on the bench. Right, like, so, like, if he got drafted, 13th, 14th, yeah, nobody was. The only people that might complain would be the homes, the city that he played for. Like when we drafted a Rafael Arujo. Oh. We took Rafael Arujo. Holy fuck.
Over Deng and Iggy.
That guy. Oh my god.
Over Deng and Iguodala. We could have had Deng and Iguodala.
Yeah, so that's why sometimes when people are like, well, he's in the NBA. I'm like, yeah, like fuck. So, maybe just he knew you had the right agent. Fucking just throw your name in the hat and you get drafted. Doesn't mean shit.
Exactly, and sometimes that happens. Like he probably could have been a second round pick, and you know what I mean, and had the same career.
This dude should have went undrafted, Brendan.
But what I'm saying is, even at that time when he got drafted, everybody was like, well, this guy was like a late first round at best. Why is he going for lottery? You know what I mean? So that's what that's what I'm saying. For some guys, it's not their fault where you can't control where you get drafted or when you get drafted. So that's why I'm like,
it's not your fault that the guy is a general manager. He got his job because he didn't know what the fuck he's talking about, but it's who he knew. He went to, he's part of the network. He knew how to, he has the gift of gab. He says the right thing. He's a great guy, right? Like that's why some of these guys, like you look at some of these general managers, like what the fuck, like really, what the fuck, like you sit down and you find out, it's just. They're cool. What do you say? Oh, he's a nice guy. He's a great guy. Well, yeah, but does he know what the fuck he's doing? You know what I mean? And so, that's what happened with us, right? We drafted Rafael Arujo.
Right.
Fuck me.
Michael Bradley.
Michael, what the fuck?
Yeah. I mean, you've seen
some. And he's in the NBA. So people are like, oh, he's in the NBA. We're like, well, yeah.
And I get that too.
Doesn't necessarily mean he's good. Trust me, doesn't necessarily mean he's good. It's just, he had a good... He got the right agent, and he stuck around. An agent was able to work stuff out and make deals, and like, you know what, this guy would take less money if he signed this guy, and blah blah blah. So, and so, but yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a great story. He walked around, he was homeless, blah blah blah. But I'm not big on that with Kwame Brown, because at the end of the day, like I said, to me, he got it because he was a 7-footer that could run the floor. He was that's one thing he was. He was athletic. And like Gilbert Arenas would talk about, he was one of the as a 7-footer, he was finishing second in sprints, right? Yeah. Like he was beating guys. So, so for that, but it's not like, again, it's not like he was undrafted or it was like a late second round pick and he just grinded and worked his butt off. That to me is a underdog story. Right? Just happen to grow 7 foot and get drafted because you're 7 foot. You're 7 foot. That's why you got to the NBA. It wasn't based on your skill. It was based on the potential, and that's why a lot of guys get drafted. They get drafted based on their potential, right? And then a lot of these guys, 90% of these guys, get drafted based on their potential, and then you hope that they have the mental that goes with it. Yeah. Because if they work hard. If they take the information that's being given to them by all these great basketball minds who think the game, break the game down, all the nuance of the game, if you take that information and use it, you're going to become a great player. And, but some of these guys don't, right? Some of these guys don't. They have the wrong mentality and they go in and, they go in with the wrong mentality or they're just not mentally built for it. They're not mentally built for it. They can't handle the pressure. Because while we see them. There's so much pressure and there's so much expectations. You're a millionaire, right? People give you all these monies. Yeah, you're getting all these 5-star hotels, but there's stuff that goes along with that. And there's certain expectations that you have to fulfill. And, some people mentally are built for it. Some people are not, and who do they have what are their support system like? Who's in their corner talking shit to them, or who's just their friends that just caught up in the partying and the extracurriculars that come with being an NBA player, right? And then these guys fade out because every year 60 guys get drafted every year, and guys are getting pushed out. So I don't know. I like the underdog stories of the guys who go undrafted or second round players like Luka and Dortz who prove people wrong and turn out to be something.
Or Boucher. And like I said, I mean, at the end of the day, that's the thing I took out of the Kwame situation. I'm not even calling him an underdog. I'm calling him more of an underdog in terms of like the platforms of what he has, and you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
I think people looking at it where they're trying to, stomp him out, and it was like, well, no, you can't do that to me here. And I think that's like the shocking thing that came out of all of this. I don't think anybody was expecting that, not even the people he was arguing with. You know what I mean? So that's where I like that story from. You know what I mean? Like, that's where he's the underdog, not in life and not where he was drafted and all that stuff. But in the game of life, no, he's not an underdog. He's a millionaire. You know what I mean? And he's doing things, and God bless him for that. You know what I mean? God's blessed him with that. But like, but at the end of the day, it's like, yeah, I couldn't not talk about it really. I know we're talking about the playoffs, but I was like, I couldn't not talk about it. Like, the whole world's been talking about Kwame for the last week and a half. All this YouTube clips, all his lives, all the back and forth between everybody. It's like, I can't not say something or not like at least broach the subject. I have to, playoffs be damned. You know what I mean? But with that said, though, brother, thank you for hopping on, as usual on this podcast. I mean, the playoffs is far from over. So, I mean, you're definitely welcome back. So we can have more of these conversations for sure.
Definitely. My pleasure. I love talking ball. You know me.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir. Thank you for checking out the latest episode of the Ave Podcast. And as always, shout out to O'Neil Kamaka for hopping on this episode and having this conversation about the beginning of the first round of the playoffs. So tomorrow on South Shore Ave's YouTube channel, Code of the Sneaks, a brand spanking new episode of The Stoop is up on deck, which is about sneakerhead culture and literally everything else regarding the sneaker lifestyle. I made it into a 3-part series. Make sure you tune into this. This was a good one. All right, that's going to be out tomorrow. And we'll be back next week with a new episode of the Ave Podcast as well, wherever you listen to your podcasts. And as always, check out my past work on SouthShoreAve.com. Once again, that's SouthShoreAve.com. I'm going to say it one more time for the people in the back. It's SouthShoreAve.com. For O'Neil Kamaka, this is Cal C. And you've just tuned into the Ave Podcast on South Shore Ave Radio. Until next time, folks, peace. We out.